This is a 1-ounce gold coin made by the Royal Canadian Mint. This is the price of an ounce of gold in Venezuela over the past 2 years. A 4 million% increase. This is a 1-ounce silver coin, also made by the Royal Canadian Mint. This is the price of an ounce of silver in Venezuela over the past 2 years. A nearly 5 million% increase. So today, we're going to talk about Venezuela as a case study, how gold and silver is the only thing that's saving lives there, the only thing that people can use to escape the country, and the only thing that's basically feeding them, helping them to escape starvation. We're also going to talk about how our currency used to be connected to gold and silver. You used to be able to go and take $1 down to the bank and exchange it for an amount of gold and silver. When that ended, which was 1971, and why you might want to strongly consider getting some for yourself. Good evening, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Promain Show. It is Thursday, January 28th, 2021, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about my personal favorite asset, which is precious metals, gold and silver. It's not a crowd favorite, but there's something to be said about being a contrarian before things take off. I'm going to show you where it has taken off, the history about it, and why it is the number one performing asset of this century, the 21st century, not the first or second century, but this century. Because at the beginning of this century, 2000, 2001, you could buy an ounce of gold for 300 USD. And now it's priced at around 18 or 1900 USD. It's been fluctuating. Up in the summer, it went up to 2000. And the reason why it's gone up so much is because we've had a couple financial crises since then. So what happened was, from 2000 to 2010, the price of gold went from $300 an ounce all the way up to around 1,000 or 1,100, right? And that was up until 2010, 2011. And then there was the financial crisis. And so through that whole decade, gold just shot up. From 2010 all the way up until the crisis of last year, gold and silver was kind of floating around the same kind of area. It had gone up after the last crisis, and then it started going down in 2012 because things went back to normal. But of course, gold and silver, what makes it go up is the amount of dollars that are spent in the economy. So when you see the price of gold and silver going up, it doesn't mean that it's getting more valuable. It means that the value of the currency is going down. And so about 100 years ago, $1 used to be worth a lot more than it is now. That's why it takes more dollars to buy the same thing. So there's an old saying, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Okay? So an easy way that you can tell that our currency has lost a lot of its value, actually our currency has lost 99% of its value over the past 100 years. And of course, I'm basing most of what I'm going to be talking about today off of the world's reserve currency, which is the US dollar. The US dollar is currently the world's reserve currency. So this is what we must examine. So you used to be able to take a dollar to the bank and exchange it for an amount of gold and silver. So money was connected to gold and silver. And that's what kind of stopped governments from being able to print money unlimited, because everything had to be backed by an amount of gold and silver. And so what happened was, in the US, they had the Great Depression, and in 1933, a gentleman by the name of President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued an edict on April 5th, 1933, where he announced that all Americans, everybody, has to turn in their gold and silver to a Federal Reserve nearest to them for an amount of money. And it was listed as an emergency, as a proclamation, because of the Great Depression. And so by edict, it was Executive Order 6102, all Americans must turn in their gold and silver to the bank. And since 1933, Americans were not allowed to own gold and silver all the way from 1933 up until December 31st, 1974. On January 1st, 1975, gold was back on the markets because people were able to trade it and they were able to have it and own it again. But from that whole period, from 1933 up until 1975, Americans were not allowed to own gold and silver. Of course, other countries in the world were not allowed to own it either. China, Russia, a whole bunch of them. So, we're strictly focusing on the States and Canada as well, because we have basically the same system. We have the same dollar. And so from 1933 all the way until 1967, gold and silver was worth less and less and less and less and less. And then finally in 1967, they made the first step. They disconnected the currency from the silver backing. So silver in 1967 was no longer redeemable for currency that you would bring to the bank. Canada still continued to have silver in their currency. In fact, a lot of Americans used to come to Canada to get the coins and then bring them back down to the States and then melt them down, because we still had our currency made, all of our coins were made of silver, right? So 1967, they dropped silver. And then what happened was, after World War II, the way that the U.S. became the world's reserve currency was that they had won the war, and everybody had started going on to the U.S. dollar. Of course, you've heard the old saying, the dollar is as good as gold, and that is because the dollar was as good as gold because you were able to take U.S. currency to the bank and exchange it for an amount of gold. And so what the U.S. started to do was it started to tell countries and leaders of countries, hey, why are you holding on to gold? You might as well hold on to the U.S. dollar because it's as good as gold. You can redeem it for gold at any time of your choice. But when you hold our dollars, our paper money, you are also getting interest. The gold is not giving you interest, so why not hold dollars? It's the same as owning gold, and you gain by holding dollars because you have interest. So world leaders started to say yes, they took it on, and everybody started to hold US dollars. And so this is basically how the United States basically tricked the world into owning US dollars and having it as the reserve currency. So everybody was holding on to these dollars. And then it was in France first when I believe the Prime Minister of France, his name was Nadal, and he didn't trust the Americans. He said, wait a minute, I don't think that USA is good for this money. I don't think they have that much gold. For all of the money that they've given out to us, I don't think they have that much gold. So there was a run for the gold. So certain countries, I think starting with France, said, hey, you know what? We want to get our gold back. Here, take your dollars back, and we would like our gold back. So what happened? On August 15th, 1971, a gentleman by the name of President Richard Nixon got on TV on August 15th, 1971, and announced to the world that the US dollar was no longer connected to gold. Just like that.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what is this action, which is very technical, What does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
Because what had happened was they had promised that they have all of this gold to all of these countries. But when the countries started to come for the gold, it was called the run on the gold, the run on Fort Knox. They didn't have it. So at that point they said, oh, you know what? Gold is no longer connected to the US dollar. And that allowed them to print money unlimited. From 1971, we entered into a new monetary system. So after that announcement, it allowed the chains to be loose on the government, and they were able to print money unlimited. So when they made big campaign promises, whatever it was, you could now print money unlimited because it was not chained. It was not fixed to any specific backing. So it was not solid. And if you look at the chart of inflation and of debt in North America, Canada, North America, because we had to follow suit. We had to follow suit. After they had disconnected silver and gold from the dollar, we too followed suit a few years later. Since 1971, when we left gold and silver backing, the chart, which is right here, shows you the steady and drastic increase of inflation and debt in our society. And that's because governments were then allowed to print money unlimited. And that began the great devaluation of our currency, which Nixon promised would never happen. And of course it did, because it was not chained to anything that was solid, that was ground. So governments could now print money unlimited, and that's why our money is worth a lot less now than it was before. So of course, when people say, oh, I used to go and buy a chocolate bar for a penny, and you think about it and you're like, oh, of course you did. It was the 20s. It was the 19-something. Of course you got a chocolate bar for a penny. Well, the reason why a chocolate bar doesn't cost a penny now is because of what? Inflation. And inflation means that your dollars are worth less now. So that penny has become $1 to buy that chocolate bar. And so our dollar has been devalued. It's lost 99% of its value. And that, when you see the price of gold and silver simply reflects the true value of our currency. So it is a mirror of what our currency is worth at the current time. That is why gold and silver it always takes a true accounting for how many dollars are out there in the system. The true price of gold and silver is going to be reflected in the next few years, because the US has printed $4 to $5 trillion last year. That is going to reflect into crazy prices for gold and silver. That is my massive prediction, and you're going to find out why they call me the prophet when that comes true. Sorry, I should be humble if that comes true. And so now we're going to jump into Venezuela, a case study, and we're going to see what's happened to the price of gold and silver there over the past few years. Now, in 2017, the price of 2016 or 2017, the price of an ounce of gold was 350 bolivares. 350, okay? It now stands at over 3 billion, okay, in 3 years. 300 to 3 billion, okay? And that's just insane, but the numbers are there. And you know I love to bring you that rare knowledge, okay? So that is a case in point of what happens when currency is devalued. And actually, a few ounces of silver or an ounce of silver has been enough to feed a family of 4 or 5 for up to a month. And so it's literally saving lives. It's the only thing, because when hyperinflation happens and economies collapse, they always go back to the only thing that they can trust as real money, that have a sense of confidence. And that's always been gold and silver. That's why I like it. I'm just giving you some information on it. You can research it on your own, check it out. I'm not a financial advisor. Don't go out there and spend all of your money on gold and silver and then come back to me and tell me, hey, Phil, you owe me a whole bunch of money because you messed up my life. No, I didn't mess up your life. I gave you some information that you can turn around and you can either use it or you can research it. You can do whatever the hell you want. Just don't come knocking on my door and asking me for my 1 ounce gold coin when ish hits the fan. Because you know what? I only brought this here for this episode. After this episode's done, that 1 ounce gold coin is no longer at my house. Okay? And if I have any gold and silver, it's definitely not going to be anywhere near where I live. Okay? All right, let's start it off with Forbes. Wait until you see the price of gold in Venezuela right now. All right, now this was written all the way back in 2018, and gold has skyrocketed since then by several million%. So last month in Venezuela's capital city of Caracas, a cup of coffee would have set you back 2 million bolivares. That's up from only 2,300 bolivares 12 months ago. So that's a huge increase, okay? Meaning the price of a cup of Joe has jumped nearly 87,000%. All right, but that was in July. Prices in Venezuela are doubling every 18 days. The International Monetary Fund now projects that inflation will hit an astronomical 1 million% by the end of the year, and it did, and many times more that. And it goes on to compare this to Germany in the 1920s and Zimbabwe. Here we go. Venezuela's socialist president, Nicolas Maduro, who only this past weekend survived an assassination attempt, said that he's going to rein in hyperinflation by lopping off 5 zeros from its currency, right? Then it goes on to talk about Zimbabwe again, who in 2009 had their $1 trillion banknote, which was just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so here we go. Gold could save your life. So where does this put gold? At some point, hyperinflation gets so ludicrously out of control that discussing exchange rates becomes pointless. But as of July 30th, an ounce of the yellow metal would have gone for 211 million bolivares. That's an increase of 3.1 million%. Okay? 3.1 million%. And that's the chart right there. My point in bringing this up is to reinforce the importance of gold's fear trade, which says that demand for the yellow metal rises when inflation threatens to destroy a nation's currency, as it's doing right now in Venezuela. A Venezuelan family that had the prudence to store up some of its wealth in gold would be in a much better position today to survive or escape President Maduro's corrupt far-left regime. In extreme cases like this, gold could literally help save lives. Such was the case following the fall of Saigon in 1975. If not for gold, many South Vietnamese families might not have managed to escape the country. A seat on one of the thousands of fleeing boats reportedly went for 8 to 10 taels of gold, 4 to 5 taels per child, and tells you that's more than an ounce. Gold was their passport. Thanks to the precious metal, tens of thousands of Vietnamese were able to start new lives in the US and Canada and Australia and other developed countries. So now we're going to take a look at a resource called Numbeo, and you can check anything here from real estate prices to the price of food, quality of life, any statistic basically in any country and in any currency. It's fantastic. So we're going to go here to Venezuela. And this is in USD. So milk, 44 cents for a cup of milk, basically. Anyways, we're going to put this into the Venezuelan Boulevard because USD is irrelevant there. And we can take a look and see how ridiculous these prices are. So as you can see, a cup of milk is 751,000 bolivar. That's more than people get paid for an entire year. 1 cup of milk is more than people get paid for an entire year, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so milk, eggs, and bread is going to run you around 3 million bolivar. Okay, virtually nobody can afford that. The only people who can afford that are people who have gold and silver. All right, just look at these prices. It's over a million for some beef. So if you look down here, it tells you the daily recommended minimum amount of food per person is about 10 million. Okay, so you need 10 million bolivares per day to survive, and you need around 300 million bolivares per month for one person. Imagine you have a family. Okay, that's why starvation is happening all over Venezuela, and I'm giving you the mathematics behind that. Now, remember these numbers, because this is how much people get paid in Venezuela. See that? 383,000 bolivares per month. Okay? Look at this. This tells you the percentages of the population who make what. So 51% of the people make 257,000 boulevards a month. That's not even enough to buy you a quarter liter of milk, okay, in one serving. All right, this is a human tragedy. This is more than just numbers, okay? And you got to look around and ask yourself why you most likely haven't heard of this. This should be all over the news. Look at this. The average person in Venezuela makes 132,000 boulevards a month. A working person in Venezuela typically earns around 132,000 boulevards per month. And just to show you one more time here, just so you can remember, daily recommended minimum amount of money for food is 10 million boulevards. Okay? Now forget about me. Let's see what other publications have to say. The Economist, How to Deal with Venezuela. This was written in the middle of 2017. Things have gotten exponentially worse since then. Okay, Venezuela claims to have more oil than Saudi Arabia, yet its citizens are hungry. An astonishing 93% of them say they cannot afford the food that they need. Okay, this is from The Economist, guys. In 2017, 93% of the people in Venezuela say that they cannot afford the food that they need. Okay, but you don't hear about this in the news because this exemplifies the failures of far-left ideology, communism, and socialism. All right, so this one here is from the World Economic Forum, and it talks about how Venezuela was once South America's richest country. Okay, until recently, almost all of Venezuela's mostly urban and educated population had access to clean drinking water, sanitation facilities, and electricity. It was an affluent country with the largest proven fossil fuel reserves in the world, but its economy is shrinking at an alarming rate, while at the same time inflation is spiraling out of control. Poverty is abound. Okay, it talks about the economy here. Hunger and protest. Shortages of basic supplies such as flour, rice, and spiraling prices have led to food riots and lootings. Many Venezuelans are going hungry. Anecdotal evidence has emerged of people feeding off of scraps, with some forced to dig through garbage left outside shops. Okay, it's not anecdotal. I'll show you the pictures. The few who are fortunate enough, those who have gold and silver, are able to afford to eat, are unsure of how much they have to pay for their meals, as confusion over currency fluctuates. So here's a picture. These people were not third world. These people were the richest country in Latin America, okay? And they were free, and they had a very educated and rich population. And look at them now. This is from the New York Times. I think this is from 2019, okay? This is a case study of what happens when communism and far-left socialism takes over. A little bit of socialism is not bad, but to the point where this happens is just absolutely insane. And my point to you today is to show you that in times like this, the only thing that's keeping people alive is literally gold and silver, the commodities that most investors laugh at. But they're denying the 6,000 years of history that it has. All right, so I'll put all of this in the description below. Let's take a look at the chart one more time. Okay, 73,000 boulevards, and now gold is sitting at 3 billion. Okay, 3 billion. You show me a stock market that went up like that. All right, my stock market guys out there. And silver went from 800 boulevards to 44 million. Okay, so I rest my case, folks.
Well, that's it, my friends. I just wanted to bring to your attention the connection that gold and silver had historically to our currency, why it ended, what happened after it ended to our society from an inflation and debt perspective, and also what happened in Venezuela. Just do me a favor. Don't forget that chart for the rest of your life. You've never seen a chart like that, okay? Ever have you ever seen a chart like that? Going from 300 Boulevard all the way up to 3 billion. There's nothing that's done that before, okay? So I'm happy to be the one to bring that information to you. And also, as it connects into the theme of my show, being that I'm very much against communism and tyranny, this is what happens when a society like Venezuela turns to communism and turns to massive socialism and far left policies. Being too far on the left and being too far on the right are both very bad things. It's all about balance. Life is all about balance. So that's it for today. Just something for you guys to think about.
Gold and silver is recommended by every financial planner as a hedge, as insurance against a fluctuating market. There's never been a time of greater uncertainty than there is now, and so I think it's very prudent for people to think about putting a percentage of their money into gold and silver. If you feel like you got some good value from this video and you want to support me, please don't forget to hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please share this video with friends and family. I would love to be a part of what could help save the middle class. If for a long time I've kept this information to myself, I've only told my closest friends, and I decided that I wanted to tell everybody because if I could even just help just a few people, if something happened and people had gold and silver and then they were able to benefit, and something like Venezuela happened, which I probably don't think it will, but if something like that happened, then gold and silver could end up saving your life. And at the end of the day, I got to answer to the man upstairs, and he might ask me why I didn't share this information with more people when I could have. And so now I can tell him that I did. Okay, so you guys have a good evening. I'll see you next Thursday, 8 p.m. Financial Phil out.